Welcome back, and to shed more light on the African Development Bank meeting currently being held in Sharm el-Sheikh, we're delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Zainab Nawar, economic expert. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Nawar, the 58th annual meeting of the African Development Bank is currently being held in Sharm el-Sheikh. What's the importance of this annual event for the African continent?
Yes, of course, the importance of this event for the African continent is that now we are having a number of crises worldwide, and unfortunately, these problems are reflected on Africa as a continent. If we're talking about the weak and the weakest link and the weakest point in terms of the economy and the development in Africa. So there is a huge need for a lot of projects during this time, what we can say the time of crisis. So the importance of this type of meetings that each representatives for each country, they just talk about their current problems and their current needs of projects. And of course, they also listen of the directions and of the bank and the African Development Bank and what will be the type of project that the bank would be financing, and I'm talking about developmental projects and in different countries in Africa. So the importance of these meetings, it highlights the mutual agreement between the both parties, the African countries and also the Development Bank. Also, each African country is to talk about the current problems and their needs, and also for the African Development Bank also is to talk about the future perspectives and what the bank would like to present to the African countries.
Mm-hmm. Right. Do you think the meeting will be an opportunity to contribute to the prosperity of the continent, including the climate agenda and mobilizing more resources in the African continent?
We are hoping so because unfortunately the time that we do have, I'm talking about the global issues that we do have, actually had put a lot of stress on the African continent and the African economies. So we do hope that this will be happening, and once again it's in what I can say in the shoe of the African countries themselves to decide the most important projects for them, for these countries, and also their important needs for, especially for this time of crisis that we do have worldwide. So if the African countries actually plan this game smartly this time and trying to look for more opportunities, so I think there is a chance. Mm-hmm. Once again, it's about localization, looking into the internal resources and trying to benefit from the finance and the technical expertise of these developmental banks like the African Development Bank.
Right. Well, in his speech, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said and encouraged the private sector to finance projects in the green economy, private sector financing in green economy in the African continent. What measures can attract the private sector to such projects, in your opinion?
Of course, what actually would attract the private sector to work on this type of green project is the process that they would achieve. Of course, part of it is the environmental and social aspect, which would be also another part of gains that the private sector would also gain in terms of their reputation in the future and having more giant and bigger projects. But of course, the profit that can be achieved also, this would be partially one of the attraction points that the private sector would work in Africa. And also, it's for the African government to give incentives and to give more of attraction policies and benefits for the companies that are going to work in this important type of project, which is green technology, of course, and green economy and all of these trends. And important, actually, it's not a trend. This
right.
is what we can say, this is the next generation of projects. And also it has a huge reflection on the environment, yes, also on the social level.
We'll just go to afternoon prayers and we'll be right back with you once again. Welcome back, and we're still joined over the phone by Dr. Zainab Nawar, Professor of Economics, and still talking about the African Development Bank meetings currently being held in the city of Sharm el-Sheikh. Dr. Nawar, President Sisi said that drought repercussions are calculated at $70 billion. Now, how are these losses calculated, and would you please elaborate on the figure and how the losses are calculated?
In terms of this type of, if you are talking about the drought and all of this type of crisis that have been actually part of what I can say, one of the crises that unfortunately Africa is facing. So the calculation of this type that they use different types of indices that measures the numbers of the population relevant to the quality of the land and also the availability of water, and also it's about the rain and how that could be a reserve and a good reserve of water. So, of course, these measurements and why it's important to do these types of measurements to know a forecast of a future problem and to forecast how a future problem like the drought would be affecting the continent. Actually, the president is highlighting very important issue and also highlighting these types of issues and problems that the continent may face in future or are facing right now. This is a way and this is a call for the different countries in the continent to cooperate and also to deal with these types of problems and issues in terms of cooperation and in terms of mutual agreements for different countries. Actually, the African countries are facing a lot of, what I can say, challenges. And it's the time for the African countries to look for more cooperation and also to look for more their own benefits on the ground and to seek more of support and cooperation between each other and between one of the important developmental banks and agencies like the African Development Bank.
Right. Dr. Nawar, the theme of the event is mobilizing private sector financing for climate of green growth in Africa. Now, how do you see the theme of the meeting and how far the meetings have provided for bank governors to share their experiences in this regard?
This is very important. Actually, sharing the experience was part of the most important, what we can say, pillars of the meeting. Because when we are talking about climate change and all of this type of investment in the green economy and green technology and all of this, it needs to highlight a lot about the experiences, and also it needs a lot of awareness that to be also given to the private sector in terms of how to work on these projects, what will be the gains, what will be the environmental gains for the private sector and for the country, and also what will be the profit for the company itself and also for the country that are adopting these new types of technologies and these new types of techniques. So attracting the private sector to work on these projects is very important, given also the incident that we all know that the climate change and all of these issues that Africa is witnessing in terms of the effect of the climate change on the African continent. So it's very important for the African countries is to attract private sectors to invest in whatever type of technology or industry that is truly working with the environment, that is also helping that to lessen the effect of the climate change that the continent is witnessing. The African continent needs a lot of effort, needs a lot of work, needs a lot of finance, needs technology, the updates of technology, needs a lot of human effort and factor, and also the effort of the private sector would be part of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, in your opinion, how can the private sector financing help in bridging the gap between finance flows and Africa's climate green growth needs?
Of course, and in terms of financing, where I'm talking about, you are talking about the African Development Bank to help in this, or you are talking about the private sector is to go to different countries and also to start their own investments. Your question is mainly focusing on which side?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Your question is focused. I'm sorry. Will you repeat your question? Your question is concerning to the African Development Bank, or your question is related to the private sector companies?
No, I'm talking about the climate finance.
Yes, the climate financing, the themes that the different multilateral and international organizations is providing for different types of what we can say adopting new technologies, right? This is your question, right?
Yes.
Yes, of course. This would help for any of the private sector. First part of the financing would be related to the policies of the government itself and how the government and the African governments can adapt different policies and rules that would encourage different private sectors to work on certain types of projects. And part of the finance also may go to the private sector companies themselves in terms of what I can say technical support, in terms of training, in terms of helping in terms of knowledge and how to work on different areas related to the green technology or this new types of green investment. So, of course, the type of financing and the type of support that the multilateral and international banks can provide to the private sector would, of course, help in filling the gap.
Right. Addressing the event, the governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, Hassan Abdullah, expressed hope that the group meetings will materialize a future mechanism to deal with all issues. How important is this?
This is very important because once again, the importance of this meeting actually, and given that this meeting is held, or the main focus for this meeting is with the African Development Bank. So yes, of course, I do agree with that because we need a plan to be implemented on the ground, strategic plans, and also an agreement to be what we can say. There is some sort of agreement between countries and between the bank, and countries has to work on that, and also the African Development work has to work on that. So the implementation on the ground and the agreement of that we are going to implement on that, and to have to actual things that is going on and on the ground. This is very important. We don't want just meetings and meetings. We want results on the ground, which is the most important thing.
In your opinion, what are the main challenges facing climate finance in the African continent?
The main challenges that I see that actually is facing financing this type of projects. It's once again the awareness, and the private sector still needs a lot of support. We have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of passion about these types of projects. But still the techniques and technicalities and the technical support, and also looking for new projects and new ideas, all of this is part of the challenges that maybe companies will be facing. And also financing itself still is a challenge, given that, once again, that for these multilateral and international organizations, which number of countries are sharing in whatever the type of aid that being provided to different African countries, so it's not easy also to, what we can say, to determine or to collect the amount of money, and also to what we can say, use this money properly. Once again, a lot of challenges related to financing, collecting the amount of money, and also distributing and the division of this money on a way that is efficient, and also that would support the African countries.
Right. Well, finally, also the African Development Bank president said that the bank is contributing with 40% in financing of climate initiative. How does this translate on the ground?
This is very important. The translation of this on the ground would be in the terms of projects that would be established on the ground. It's not about the number of projects, it's about the number of successful projects, a number of successful outputs on the ground. Also, it's the type of transformation that may happen in these countries that we do hopefully that would be happening. So we will see the results on the ground, which is very important, the types of projects that they had financed already. So this is very important, that once again, what about the add value these projects had been added, and also how these projects also would create further projects on the ground. Once again, it's about the African countries themselves and African governments to benefit from these themes and to benefit from this financing theme provided by the African Development Bank.
Right. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Dr. Zainab Nawar, Professor of Economics. Many thanks for your insight. And dear viewers, now we go to a short break and we'll be right back.